Welcome to the Fun with Friends podcast, hosted by me, Allie, featuring my friends. What is up, everyone? Thanks for tuning in to this week's episode of the Fun with Friends podcast. This week we will be talking about travel, and more specifically, traveling alone or solo trips. Joining me today is my friend Tara.
Heyo!
Y'all should remember Tara from episode 4, which was Ghouls Just Want to Have Fun. It was a surprise Halloween episode, and I highly, highly recommend it. So definitely go listen to that episode if you have not listened to it already. And thankfully, that experience didn't scare Tara away from podcasting, and she has agreed to give it another go and come back for another episode. So thank you very much.
You're welcome. I like to talk. So
both of us do. Yeah. It's a perfect combination. Tara has recently gone on a few international trips, and like a total badass, she went by herself, which, again, as you guys probably know, a lot of our episodes are focused around traveling, and we did an episode on Scotland where we talked kind of about the experience of traveling alone. I kind of cheated a little bit because I went with a tour group, but Tara did not. She went completely by herself on a couple of solo trips. So we are going to discuss that today. She's gone on 2 recent trips that we're going to touch on, and then we are also going to discuss some other international trips that she has been on, as well as any tips that she may have for folks that are interested in going on adventures on their own. So let's jump into it. If you're like me and you're just getting started with podcasting, it can be scary and overwhelming. That's why Anchor is such a great choice. It's one of the easiest ways to make a podcast, and best of all, it's free. It also has great creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or your computer. Another great feature of Anchor is that they'll distribute your podcast for you. Your listeners will be able to access your podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many others. You can also make money from your podcast using Anchor, and that's with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place, and it's easy to use. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started today. So Tara, have you ever gone on any solo international trips before?
Not before, this year, not at all. I never imagined that I would go on any kind of solo trips. However, I just made the decision.
This year
was happening, or 2019. Yeah, it was the year of Tara solo trips.
We're in a new year now.
Yes.
I don't even know what day it is. But you have traveled overseas before, right?
Yes, so I lived for 4 months in Hong Kong in
many moons ago.
2009 maybe? I can't remember. God damn, yeah, it's very long. So I lived in, that was my first, I went to Montreal or whatever. That
Canada counts.
It does count, and I feel like everyone spoke English. They just chose to pretend like they didn't when I was in this city, because this is an urban population. I can't imagine that this person at this coffee shop literally does not know English. But so I'd done that, and I'd gone on cruises out of New Orleans to Mexico, or I went to Jamaica to a resort.
All of the wonderful places.
Yes, all the places you go, especially if you live in the Southeast. That's easy to.
Yeah.
Easy to get, cheap to get to. When
just
you're
hop on a cruise trip and you're
or it's a 2-hour flight, and there you are. You're in Jamaica or Bahamas or wherever from Miami.
And when you were in Hong Kong, that was you did teaching English, right?
Well, my husband at the time I did do that, but we moved there because my husband was a buyer for a furniture company, a small southeastern U.S. Furniture company, kind of like a Kirkland's, and he was a buyer and basically bought knockoffs And
sell them back.
to sell them back to the
Nice.
second tier Kirklands. And so he, when we first met, I was already planning on teaching English as a second language. I was teaching at East Carolina University, and I was trying to get overseas when we met. And so then I was going to go somewhere overseas, and he said, well, I have an opportunity to go to Hong Kong. And I said, well, let's just do that together.
Yeah. Nice.
And so I already had my certification. And I just, as soon as I got there, I started applying for jobs and got taught English as a second language to some kids and adults there at a school.
And you said you were there for 4 months?
Yes, just 4 months.
Mm-hmm. What was the best thing about living in Hong Kong?
Gosh, I mean,
Yeah. Go ahead.
That was, I mean, I was young.
It was a long
I was a
time ago.
newlywed. It was a long ass time ago.
Okay.
But gosh, there were so many things. I mean, and when we first got there, because he had a job and I didn't, I was just going around and exploring and trying to figure out. I experienced culture shock for the very first time, and I didn't really know, because you have this idea that everyone in Hong Kong, they're like, oh, it's bilingual. Everyone learns English. Well, not everyone. Everyone might learn English early on in their childhood, but then they don't speak it anymore.
Yeah.
And we happen to not live in an expatriate neighborhood, so we lived in a neighborhood that there was no one like us.
Very few English
And so
speakers.
the signs had English and Mandarin, but or Cantonese. I'm sorry, but not everyone spoke it. And the only saving grace from the whole thing was there was no sales tax. So I walked into a place and I could just count it in on my fingers or in my head and be like, I'm gonna owe this person $13 or whatever, and then I could hand it over, and we didn't have to speak to each other, or they could enter it into the cash register and then show it to me. Although I did run into a man that had an abacus and he was calculating.
Really?
Yeah, so I didn't really know, and then he had to write it on a piece of paper and hand it to me, and I was just buying a broom.
Interesting.
And so he was very old. He was very old.
I said, could you see me trying to remember what this was?
I didn't know.
I was like, oh yes, I know what that is.
Yes, it was a toy we played with when we were children, and not a real calculator.
It's
a calculator.
Like,
yeah.
Oh yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yes. So, gosh, I mean, I experienced culture shock for the first time, and it was a little bit disheartening because I had never been that far out of the country, and I was a newlywed, and then trying to figure out what was going on. I mean, I felt like I adapted to the time change on some of my recent international trips way better. Than I did during that visit. It took me like a month or something. It just seemed insane but I thought, well, this is the way that it is. But I kind of adapted fairly quickly. I felt like to some of my other trips that had significant time change differences. Even Alaska, last year when I went for a couple weeks.
Time change is really hard, man. I don't do well with those either. Like even just going to Scotland, which is 5 hours, I think. That was a struggle for me. That's a struggle for me.
That's like West Coast,
Yeah, I know, but I didn't handle going to the West Coast well either. It took me a while to get on the right sleep schedule. So
naps, little naps.
Yeah,
that's what I did.
That's true.
So I mini nap. You mini nap as much as you can.
Micro nap.
Little micro naps, and then then you get into it, and then you have to do that on the other side, right? You do micro naps on the. Just sleep when you're tired. You just got to take a couple of days and just. Changes. I'm just gonna sleep because I'm tired because you're not gonna kill yourself.
It's time travel, man. You're you're on one day and then you fly and you wake up on the same day, even though 2 days have passed. I mean, it's time travel. It's crazy.
I've aged more than I've lived more hours than my age says. Right.
The sound of my brain exploding.
Yeah.
What a treat.
Yeah.
So so you said Hong Kong, Jamaica, and Mexico, as well as Canada. We can't forget Canada.
Right.
I mean,
it was an archaeological conference in Canada.
In Montreal?
Yeah.
Oh,
Society for American Archaeology. Yeah.
That was probably great.
It was amazing. Yeah, it was great. Downtown Montreal.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
What a good time. Mm-hmm. So in 2019, you decided to go on a couple of solo trips.
Yes.
Which, if I'm remembering correctly, they were both a little impromptu.
Yeah.
Or did you know that you wanted to go on a couple of trips?
I knew that I wanted to do a Christmas trip. So my family's come from Kentucky, and I had gone home. in June and visited them, and I tend to not go many times during the year to visit in Kentucky. Going home for holidays is a little bit difficult because I'm from a family of divorce, and so you just have, you have a couple of days, and then it becomes a chore. It's a couple of days, like a couple of hours at this place and a couple of hours at this place, and everybody's kind of pushing and pulling you, and it's just exhausting, and it's not fun. It's fun for them, but it's not fun for me because they just sit at their house, and I do all the movement. You're the one who has to go. Yeah. So I tend to not enjoy that. So I decided that I was going to go on an overseas trip. I tried to a couple of years ago to do an overseas trip, or not an overseas trip, actually a trip to Puerto Rico during Christmas, and had bought the tickets, but Hurricane Maria hit Puerto Rico. And so I canceled my trip.
Great time to be in Puerto Rico.
Yeah, so I canceled my trip for the holidays. I just decided that this year I was going to do a trip, and I was going to find a location to go to. I did a lot of research on places to go, like solo lady travel, Google like lady alone travel,
solo lady travel,
sort of woman travel.
That will be the title of this episode. Solo lady travel.
And I found that Bali kept showing up as a place that was safe, that it seemed, like it was just a good place and a good safe place for a lady to travel alone. So I thought I'll try to do that, and I spent a lot of time kind of researching flights, which was going to be the largest expense. And then just one night I was just sitting here in my apartment, and I had it pulled up on my Delta app, and I just
said, "Fuck it,"
pressed the button. And it said, "Are you sure?" And I just said, yeah. And I just pressed it, and I said, yeah. And I was like, it is done.
Yeah.
Whenever I'm scared of things, I kind of back myself into a corner. I did it with skydiving, which I mentioned before. I just pressed the button, and I was like, it's non-refundable. Here we are. And so I had the plane ticket, so I knew the, coming and going dates, which weren't great, which was like, looking back, I probably would have, I had so many connections that I would have probably done it where I would have spent the night in North Korea or South Korea, not North Korea. Don't tell. But in South Korea, spent the night.
Yeah.
Instead of just staying at the airport for an hour. I think I would have probably changed that. But whatever. She's like, I have to get to Bali. So then I booked my flight, and then started figuring out Airbnb and hotels and things like that. Yeah, I knew the dates, and now I got to figure out where I'm going to stay and what I'm going to do while I'm going to be there. The Costa Rica trip.
Yeah, I was going to say, so you booked Bali first for Christmas, and then after booking that and figuring that trip out, you also decided to book a trip to Costa Rica
for Thanksgiving, and that was out of pure 100% fear. So the reality of me traveling 10,000 miles away by myself.
Yeah, it's scary.
Somewhere. And I travel a lot for work. I am a seasoned traveler. I don't get freaked out about delays or things that happen, because it should just happens, and you just I'm fine. Whatever you throw at me, I'll figure it out. It's fine. So I'm really easy. I don't even pack a full bag sometimes when I just figure I'm just gonna figure it out. And I think the reality set. I might have had a couple of glasses of wine after I booked it, and then I was like, oh shit! Now I have to I'm gonna be across the world by myself.
Starts to sink in.
I can't walk home, right? I can't. I could get in trouble. I don't know. So all of the what ifs and how what could go sideways started creeping into my head. So I said, I need to do, and this is such a luxury. It's so obscene to even say it. So I decided that I would book a trial run trip to Costa Rica, which was closer. It was also on the list. Not as far. And it was closer to, again, it's obscene to even say those things. So I decided that I would find something that was in my time zone, a somewhat reasonable time zone.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not crazy. And it's also
not too far.
It's not too far. And so I was looking at Costa Rica. I was looking at Cartagena. And then I got a little bit nervous after looking at the State Department website about Colombia. And I was like, maybe not.
Costa Rica might be a safer.
Maybe not. Because most of Colombia is bright red that says that people shouldn't travel there.
Yeah.
Cartagena seemed fine, but I decided maybe I'll just find a friend, or I'll just feel a little bit more comfortable. I don't want my first one to just be like a trial by fire.
Yeah.
You know, in Costa Rica, you drive on the right side of the road, and there was just,
it's a little more familiar.
Yeah. And so I booked a trip during Thanksgiving break to Costa Rica. Same thing. I just picked the dates, figured out the dates, smashed the button, and then said, well, I'm going to, Costa Rica has beautiful hiking, mountainous areas, and also beach areas. And so I decided that because Bali, I hadn't really figured out everything for Bali yet, but I knew that Bali was going to be a lot of beach. So I decided that for Costa Rica, I would not go to the beachy area,
rainforest,
and I would go to like the mountainous volcano or kind of hiking and focus on that.
Nice.
That entire trip.
Yeah, Costa Rica is definitely. I've had friends who've gone there before, and they absolutely loved it. They've been there a couple times, I think. So it seems like it's definitely on my list of places to go because it just sounds wonderful.
And it's not. I mean, you fly to the middle of nowhere in the United States, so you have to fly to these dumbass airports, and like when I was looking at the cost that it was going to cost me to fly back home to Paducah.
Cheaper to fly to
Costa Rica. Yeah, it was cheaper to fly from here to Costa Rica. I mean, by like $100.
Blows my. It's the same with Nebraska. Like trying to fly home to Nebraska, I'm like, it's going to cost me $800 to $1,000 to fly to Nebraska, but I can go to freaking Scotland for the same amount, if not less.
Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
What?
You can fly from here to Costa, and I was picking particular dates. Like if you looked, you could fly to Costa Rica from here for cheap.
Oh yes.
Yes. So but also going to Costa Rica and Bali is the same. The most expensive thing are the flights. Yeah. Well, I say in Costa Rica, I also rented an SUV to drive around. So that was an expense that I didn't have in Bali. But the hotels or the Airbnbs are cheapish. If you stay in a Hilton, you're going to pay for a Hilton like a normal Hilton. But if you're going to do an Airbnb, you're going to get a great deal.
You can stay in a tree house in Costa Rica for like $40 a night.
I stayed in a...
I know you did.
I stayed in a treehouse in Bali.
My other friend stayed in a treahouse in Costa Rica, and it was literally like $45 a night.
My treehouse that I stayed in Bali was exactly $40 a night.
Like that's
insane.
That's what I want for my life. Like I want to own and live in a treehouse on the beach and like fucking make and sell puka shell necklaces to tourists. That's what I want for my life. That's it. I want to live that treehouse life.
I mean, the treehouse is pretty sweet.
So before we move into specifics about your trips, so we'll start with Costa Rica and then move into Bali. But before we do that, we are going to take a little break. All right, so as we were discussing, you went to Costa Rica first, and that was a Thanksgiving trip that you booked as a trial run for your Bali trip.
If I survived that one.
If you can do one, you can do the other.
Yes.
So tell us a little bit about your Costa Rica trip. So how was it getting there, kind of where you stayed, and some of the activities that you did while you were there?
Sure. So my flight left out of DCA at it was a 3:00 flight. So I ended up I had to connect in Atlanta, and then I went to Costa Rica, or was in San Jose, Costa Rica. So I landed, and it was late into the evening, and my bag got left, and I have a backpack.
That's right.
So I had a backpack, and I thought I was going to be like super cool, and I was just going to carry my backpack. And then I get to DCA, and I was like, I don't want to carry my backpack. So, and there was plenty of time, so I just checked my bag, and I said, screw it, I'm just not going to deal. I'm just not going to deal with it because it's a substantial backpack. It's a decent size, and so I said, I'm not going to mess with it. Fuck that. And so I check it, and then I get to Costa Rica, and I have. My bag is gone, and it's still in Atlanta, which is just my whole. Atlanta is the worst airport out. No, it's not worse than Charlotte, but it is.
It's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. I get bags lost all the time.
Avoid it at all costs.
It's annoying because I have to fly through it a lot for work. And so anyway, so I get to Costa Rica, but I'm also wearing, because it's winter, or it's, late fall in DC.
Yeah.
So what I'm wearing when I go to the airport is a thick sweater and a pair of jeans, like my heaviest clothes, because this is also what I'm going to wear when I get on a plane from Costa Rica back home, so I'm not freezing my ass off when I get off the plane. And so this is like my thickest clothes, and I'm like, God damn it, I don't have, all I'm wearing is like, and I'm just sweating.
You're hot.
I'm just like, God damn, I'm sweating. And so I go, and it's not the lady's fault, and then they give me this little bag that has like a toothbrush in it, and they're like, okay, well, we'll bring it to you tomorrow, wherever you are. And then they go, where are you going to be? And I said, well, I have this is what the Airbnb place told me. And, after you book, like for the 24 hours before, they send you some information.
Yeah.
But I never really looked at it too hard. I was just like, I'm just going to put it in the GPS and be done with it. But I realized that it's just like a really long group of words.
Yeah.
And there's no numbers.
Maybe not an actual address.
And it was not a real address. So I just show it to the lady, and she starts writing down. And then she writes down, and she said, who's the person? And I said, well, this is the number of the person whose place I'm staying. So she writes it all down. And then I'm starting to get nervous because I really never thought about the address.
Yeah.
I just thought, well,
I would have had a panic attack.
And I just thought, I might get murdered. At first I was like,
where am I going?
We've been WhatsApping, but I just realized this might not be a real address. But I'm going to a hotel for the night anyway, so I'd already booked the hotel for the night because I knew I was going to arrive late, and then I was going to get my rental car the next morning, and I was going to drive to where I was supposed to go. I knew the town name to get there anyway. So I go back to the hotel. I'm just kind of, I'm annoyed that they don't have my stuff, but I'm like, well, what am I going to do? Like, I don't have my shit, so I'm just going to go to the town, and I'm just going to be sweaty, and I'm going to be hot, and I'm just going to figure it out, right? If I have to, I'm not destitute, so it's like I have to go buy a sundress. I'll go buy a $5 sundress from some rando shop, who cares? So
I will say, sorry to interrupt, but I will say that is something that it took me a while to start thinking that way, because even like traveling within the United States, like one of my biggest things was always like, oh my God, what if I forget something, or what if my luggage doesn't come, or like whatever. And it was always like a point of anxiety for me, because I was like, oh my God, like what am I gonna do? What am I gonna do? And it took me like years to finally realize that like if something happens, I don't get my luggage or like whatever, I can buy things.
You can buy
like things. I'm not.
Or
going
you can just
anywhere.
be like, hey guys, I'm gonna be wearing the same clothes every day for 2 days until my shit gets here, and no one cares.
It seems like so simple, but it took me a while to realize that. Like when I was going to Puerto Rico, I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna be here for like months, and like, what if my luggage doesn't get here? What am I gonna do? And then I was like, I can just go fucking buy stuff. Like I'm not going to a place that doesn't have fucking stores. Like,
right? Yeah.
But it took me It took me a while to get there. I'm just saying. Yeah.
You just gotta, what are you gonna do?
It was like a thing I was worried about a lot.
And if you have to go buy a bunch of stuff, the airline will reimburse you for all of the stuff.
I just like
you're fine. You're fine.
It was a thing. Like my very first, I think the first time I ever flew was when I went to Hawaii for field school, but one of the more no, that's a lie. The first time I flew, I went to Hartford, Connecticut from Iowa. To go on a ski trip for spring break. I don't do winter sports, but that's where I was going. Yeah. And the plane broke down in Detroit. And it was like all of my worst fears were coming true. First time flyer, stranded in Detroit, and like had no idea what to do. And I think I was like 19 or 20 at the time. I don't know. It was the first time I'd been on a plane, and I was like freaking the fuck out. And they put us up in a hotel and gave us like all these vouchers, and I ended up getting shit-faced in a airport bar with like an older lady that like took me under her wing in like a Chili's. So it like all worked out, but it was like I was terrified because I was like, what's gonna happen to me? Am I gonna be able to get on another plane?
Yes.
Like what's gonna happen? Like
it'll be fine.
I didn't know how it worked.
It always gets figured out.
Yeah. And then the other thing that you did that I probably would have been like very concerned about was the location and the address. Like I'm really weird about traveling, even if I'm traveling like within Virginia. I'm like, okay, where am I going? What are the stops along the way? Where can I get gas? Like I like fucking I'm really weird about travel because I don't know. I'm an anxious traveler apparently. But surprisingly, when I went to Scotland, it wasn't that bad because I knew like everything was being taken care of for me. So that was quite nice. But like when I go on road trips, I'm that fucking person that nobody wants to go on a road trip with because I'm like, okay, where are we going? What time are we going to be there? Like, where are we stopping?
Oh my God,
like,
Allie.
I am that person. Like, I have friends who are like, we're just going to go drive around, whatever. We'll go wherever and we'll find things to do. And I'm like, no. Where are we going exactly?
So either solo international travel is what I'm about to say to you on this podcast.
Yes.
Is you should 100% do it.
I want
or never do it.
No, I want to. I want
to run away. Okay.
No, after going on the Scotland trip, I was like, I can totally do this by myself.
Okay.
Like I could do it.
Because mine was absolutely no agenda. There was no agenda.
I don't know if I could do it without an agenda. I would probably plan it a lot, but I could do it by myself. Like I would have to know where I was going and when I was getting to those places. But anyways, and I remember getting the text from you that was like, my luggage is still in Atlanta. And I was like, oh,
Hartsville
this
Airport.
Is like the worst start to your like first solo trip.
I even thought that. I was just like, God damn it. This is how this should, this is how it's going to play out. But then I was like, this is kind of the worst it can probably be right now. So, whatever.
That's true.
So I find a hotel, or I go to my hotel, I get my shuttle. So this is the whole thing. So I walk outside, and I just want to get a cab. I don't care, right? So I'm annoyed. So I just go up to this guy, and I go, it's like directing traffic, and I go, I'm staying at the blah blah. It was like a Hilton. I can't remember which one it was. I'm staying at this place. I need a cab to get there. And living in the United States, someone would just go, well, of course, here's where the cabs are. Mm-hmm. But he was like, no. It's cheaper to take the shuttle. There's a shuttle out. But I was like, I understand there's a shuttle.
I want a fucking cab.
But I'm going to pay for a goddamn cab. Because I want to go now. And he was like, no. Go outside, stand for the shuttle. There's no signs. There's no like real signs. So I'm just like wandering around in this fucking hot ass sweater.
Sweating.
Just trying to find what this sign. And then I finally like see this area that just says like hotel on the ground. No, actually there's no sign. There's a guy walking around, some kid with a vest on going, what hotel? And people are saying like Hilton, Marriott. And then he's going, you stand there. And I'm like, God
hotel
damn it.
bingo.
Right? It comes up and I get on it. I get to my hotel and I'm just flipping through the channels. And so of course in Spanish. And I see this was where everything changed. Because I see this, I guess it was like a variety show where they asked these two people, they gave them topics to rap about. But all I see is I turn on, I'm flipping the channel and I just see like this group of people on a stage, and it just says, I know Spanish a little bit. It just says diarrhea in El Tráfico. It was like somebody like having diarrhea in traffic.
Yeah.
And I just go,
which is right up your lane.
I was like, it just said, and this guy was going, diarrhea in El Tráfico, and I go, it's gonna be okay. It's gonna be okay, because if I don't believe in signs, but if there was such a thing as a sign,
this would be it.
This is it for me, because this is my shit, right? Welcome to Costa Rica, diarrhea in El Tráfico.
Let's talk about poop.
Yeah. So I get up and I take the shuttle in from the hotel to get to the airport to get my car the next day, and I'm there and I'm talking to the guy and I'm very nice. Everybody's very nice. Mm-hmm. That is one thing in Costa Rica. Everybody's just very, very nice. Very kind. And so I'm getting in my car. The one thing that I regret is he talked me out, and I think it's because I was a woman, that I know how to drive manual.
Yeah.
And I'd booked a manual. And he was like, no, get it automatic. We have a brand new car. Never been driven. Automatic. And I go, oh, it's brand new. I'll take it. Worse, it was a mistake.
Take it out.
Terrible mistake, because once later, when I'm driving up mountains,
manual,
I'm killing that, like, like I'm having to let it do. Like I was like, yeah. And so I'm
the brakes
killing that transmission. Yeah. But then he says, I'll give you a GPS, $10. with ways on it that will help you get to where you need to go. And it also has a hotspot, so you can be on Wi-Fi the whole time you're there.
Lies.
I hadn't really thought about it. I really hadn't planned for that. I was just like, I bought a paper map because I was born in 1977, and I was like, I can get there on a goddamn paper map.
I like that though. Yep, paper maps.
So I got a map.
Never fail you.
Yeah. I thought, $10. 90% of the time it worked. It didn't work every time. So it got me to my first place for sure. And it was once I was in some places, it was helpful to use it as Wi-Fi because I wasn't using any of my, I could get on my phone. I could get anywhere and I could Google and everything. Or map, you look at maps or anything.
Yeah.
But then as I'm getting in the car, the guy goes, "Oh, by the way, you should know, we don't have real addresses here." So
I'm having like flashbacks to Puerto Rico because addresses don't exist in Puerto Rico either. Like to take an Uber in like
3 kilometers from this intersection.
Yeah, it's
like that'll be the address.
It's a
3 kilometers west of intersection between Adams and Morgan. And you're like,
look for the tree on the
what?
left. That's where you
stop.
stop.
And I'm like, I don't. So it made me feel a little bit better. So I even showed him my Airbnb location, and I said, "So this is. What do you think about this?" And he goes, "Well, no, that's right. I mean, I'm sure that's where it. Like it wasn't like a rape den. It was fine." And so I was like, okay, I feel a little bit better because I was still. If I wouldn't have talked to him, I still would have gone there.
Yeah.
But
it's nice to have a little reassurance.
Yeah, like I would still would have gotten there and like checked it out and been like, "Ooh, this is shady" or whatever.
Did you have your luggage at this point?
No, I had no luggage. So then I started driving, but I was WhatsApping because that's a thing people do. So I WhatsApped with people in Costa Rica. I WhatsApp people in Bali.
Technology.
Yeah. So I was, kind of WhatsApping with the guy that I was renting the first Airbnb from, which is a little cabin.
Was it up in the mountains?
It was kind of in the mountains in a town called La Fortuna. So kind of the entire ride that I was driving to La Fortuna, I was like still not sure if this was a legit place. Like this may or may not be okay. I don't know the answer.
I was worried for you. I had literally like the day you left or a couple days before you left read this whole article about fake Airbnbs. And I was like, fucking Tara's gonna get
murdered.
Costa Rica. It's not gonna be a real place. They're gonna put her up in like a warehouse somewhere and I'll never fucking see her again.
So we get there and everything works out, and then I just start kind of calming down. So while I was waiting for my clothes to get delivered, I had a little bit of time to kill, so I went on like a coca plantation tour, which was right near the place where I was staying. My clothes, I get to the Airbnb, it's great. It's a little hot, but whatever. What ends up happening is the Delta airline people, because they had the phone number of the guy whose house it was, they just called him and talked to him, and he handled the whole thing for the clothes.
Oh, that's nice.
So he was basically like, the guy called me, or Delta called me. It's fine. I gave them the instructions on how to get to where and so like he kind of helped because I was just like, this is all I got, like I was just kind of, and I think they actually called me first and talked to me, and I was like, whatever address I gave you, and then they called him after that, and we're like, okay, like how do we get this lady her stuff?
No, that's nice.
And so he took care of it, so it was very nice. But while I was there, so I spent my plan was to spend some time in La Fortuna, which La Fortuna is a town that used to be called something else, but it changed its name to La Fortuna in 1968 because there's a volcano in the area that erupted and destroyed all the other towns in the area except for this one.
So what is that, the Fortunate? Yeah.
And so, but there's all these different, it's kind of it's touristy-ish, but not
terrible.
Like, yeah. So I did that plantation tour, which was nice. It's a cocoa plantation. Yeah. They just they roasted and pulverized chocolate, cocoa beans, and then we ate some really amazing chocolate right there. Like freshly roasted, pulverized, added with a little liquid, and then we just ate it with like honey.
That sounds it
was pretty amazing.
That sounds that's so fucking great.
And then I spent a lot of time just in Costa Rica just hiking around. So I went kind of hiking at a hanging bridge.
Yeah.
So it was like these 7 different hanging bridges that were over the jungle. It was terrifying. Apparently you're supposed to make a reservation.
Yeah.
But I knew that it was opening at like 7 o'clock, right? So I drive up there. again, like it's a
Your poor car is
my
like
poor
dying.
car's like barely changing the gears. And because it's a very steep incline, so I get up to this
tiny mountain roads.
Yeah, so I get to the top. I go up to the window. And this guy goes, "Well, what's your reservation?" I said, "Well, I didn't make a reservation." I showed up, and there's 0 people. There's no cars in the parking lot. And he goes, "Well, you're supposed to have a reservation." And I'm like, "So can I get in or not? Like, there's no one here."
Yeah.
And then he goes, "You can go if you're going to go now." And I was like, "Well, yeah, I'm here to go now." So I paid the money to get in, which is kind of nice because here in DC, the DC area, I'll go hiking alone a lot, and I always tell someone like you, hey, I'm going to go to this place, and this is where I'll be just for
I
somebody.
say, if you don't let me know you're back by 5 p.m., I'm sending the search and rescue.
Yes, and so I'm usually sending
let
you
me
that
know.
notice at like 9 a.m. and so I feel like I'm gonna be good. But here, you kind of like check in, even though I paid to get in. Like somebody knows that this human is going into this thing, and it was really nice. The hanging bridges, I thought I was gonna be okay with, but it was a little bit terrifying. I'm afraid of heights.
Did they sway? Did they?
Oh yes,
move
they
a lot?
sway. They sway. And so I thought I was going to be cool with it, but I really wasn't. But I just thought, I'm going to move forward. I'm going to go forward. I would get across the hanging bridge, and then I would just stop and be like, okay. I would just say that to myself. Okay, I did it. And then I would go to the next one, and I would like hike. It was a nice. I kind of go through that. It was beautiful, but then when I get to the end of it, I don't see any people the entire time, which is amazing.
I was gonna say that has to be nice.
Yeah,
like
there's
that's
just
my
nothing.
favorite.
Listening to birds talking, just nothing, nobody. Because I came so early. But then by the time I get out, it was about a 2-hour walk, and by the time I get out, all of the tour buses are there. And then I realized why the guy was like, "Oh, you need reservations," because there were just buses of people just unloading. Most of them were old, and so I was like, "You're gonna struggle. This is gonna take you like all day to get through this thing." So then I just ate some breakfast and then left, and then went to this other area that was basically you hiked a lagoon that was created during the volcanic eruption in 1968. And then you hiked the lava flow. So this was like nice, I don't know, it was probably like 7 miles.
I like how you say that so casually. You're like, 7 miles. I'm like, I don't know if I can make it like 3. And you're like,
you can. I am
7.
not in the best
Don't worry
shape,
about it.
like at all. I have many pounds to lose.
7 miles is that's a good clip to walk. Like that's a good hike.
But I had hours to do it.
That's true.
I mean, I wasn't.
You weren't on anyone's time.
I wasn't.
Like, you were just like
it was just
doing
like
your own thing.
I did the morning thing, which was like 2.5 miles or something, with like stopping, and that's why it took me so long because I was
just taking your time.
Yeah. What my plan was for the entirety of Costa Rica was to go, because it was going to be a lot of hiking and walking around. Is like go super early in the morning, be done around noon, 1-2. Have some food, and then that's kind of my day. Yeah, chill out. I had some reading to do, and I had some, books and cross stitching and things like that I had brought with me that I was like, well, that's what I'll do in the evenings.
Relax.
Yeah, I'll just relax in the evenings, but in the mornings will be my like hiking, like exertion kind of thing. So I did that 1968 trail, which was beautiful. And again, there's nobody there.
Yeah.
There was like the easy route, and then there was the long route. So I took the long route. Everybody was on what was called the easy route, but it wasn't really easy because it was a pretty steep incline up to the top, because you get to the very top of basically you're getting to the top of the eruption, like the highest peak of the eruption under the mountain. And so I did the long route. Nobody was around. It was really jungly, like super jungly in some parts. Yeah. It was amazing. I've never been hiking in a jungle.
Did you see any wildlife?
I mean, I saw lots of birds. I heard once we got to the lagoon, like the map, they didn't give you a map. They just basically had a big map painted on a wall, and they said, you should probably take a picture of this map.
I was like, did you take pictures?
That was their instruction when you got there. Like, take a picture of this map.
Photos.
And so I took a picture of the map, but in the picture of the map, which I may have still, was some kind of crocodile or something in the water. They basically said, like, don't get in the water because this is the danger of the thing.
Caution, there's a
critter.
critter.
I get close to the water and I see it. I can start seeing, where I could see that through the tree line that there was, that's where the lagoon is. And I heard the noise of a thing. I mean, I know what
I was going to say gators make a specific
I know
noise.
what it didn't sound like a gator.
Yeah.
It was similar, but I don't know. But it was a gurgle roar. And I just thought
Swamp Thing was coming
So
for
I did.
you.
I stopped in my tracks for a minute and I was like,
Not so
But it wasn't
much.
coming from where I was going. It was coming from like the north of me. So I thought, well, I'll just keep going. I know what to look out for like, gator slides or whatever to know if whether there's
benefit of working in the South.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I was like, I'll be good. I know, I'll fight this thing to the death, if I have to.
You're like, fucking bring it on, gator. Let's go. I'll wrestle a gator any day.
So, but I never saw anything. I just saw a lot of birds, which Costa Rica has like some of the most diverse wildlife in like the Central America. That's what I heard, and has a significant number of birds.
So you had your first Airbnb, and then you went hiking on like day 2 or 3. Where did you stay following that first Airbnb experience?
Yeah, so I left La Fortuna, and then I was going to an Airbnb that was like overlooking a mountain valley. And that was the second place. So I did 2 days in La Fortuna. And then I was like, well, I'm going to go to this mountain valley area and stay the night in this area that was close to what I thought some places to go. Waze took me on the most remote fucking back road in my entire life. So much so that if I didn't have 4-wheel drive, I couldn't have continued. There were signs that were basically like, if you don't have 4-wheel drive, you cannot continue on this road. But it was steep inclines, mountainous roads that were like single lanes with no guardrails off the side of it. Luckily, I was always on the inside, like curbing the inside because I was on the right-hand side. Luckily,
not at risk of falling off the side.
No, but it was to where like I was maybe yelling sometimes, what the fuck is happening? But the views were amazing, but like I can't stop because if I stop, I don't know if I'm gonna keep, because it was so steep.
Yeah.
So I was just like white knuckling it, and then I get to this area that the Airbnb is located. I can't really find it because it's very remote. Yeah, and at this point my GPS has stopped working, so I know I'm kind of in the area, but I can't figure out where the road is. Then this like lady and her husband like are standing on the side of the road, and I roll my passenger side window down, and they just say they kind of say Tara, and then I realize like, oh, they're trying to say Tara, like, but it's very thick. They don't speak. And then I'm like, oh, that's me. And then they're like, okay, drive down here and we'll let you in. And I'm like, okay. It's on such a steep incline on the road, and there's nowhere to like. It's curvy as well, and people are just hauling ass. So I'm having to I'm slow driving while this guy is like walking me to where this other driveway is, and I'm like, just fucking haul ass and take the entire back of this car out if I don't get off this road, and I'm at a standstill. And so he opens up. It's like a country gate, with like a chain lock, and you got to pick it up and push it. And so I pull my car in, and then he shuts it. And then we go to the cabin, the Airbnb, and everything after that is kind of sketch. Like, he seems very nice. His wife seems very nice.
Yeah.
The Airbnb posting said that there was Wi-Fi, but the Wi-Fi only works if I go inside of his house, which is in his house.
A little
right?
weird. Little weird.
Absolutely not. I think I'd sent you a text that was like, I don't have a lot of connectivity here. Just so somebody knew that I don't have a lot of connectivity. And you had the address.
Don't get murdered.
Yeah. And then there's like no restaurants. There's no places. There's nothing around. There's nothing happening. It's a beautiful view, but there's nothing happening.
You're in like wrong turn territory.
Yeah. I really am.
Nowhere with no help.
And so then I go and I try to find, like, I don't want to drive around because the car is struggling so much on these inclines in the hill. Like, this thing is just going to burn up. Like this car is just because I can't change the fucking gear. I can't. It's just like
you can smell it.
Yeah, like no, there was smell. Like it was burning. The car. And so I was like, I didn't want to even take the car out, and I was like, I feel really fucking trapped here, and I didn't really like it. And then the guy came down, and he goes, oh, because I couldn't. He told me that the Wi-Fi didn't work except for in his house, and so like I didn't even ask for the password. I was like, I don't even fucking care because I'm not going in your fucking house to get my Wi-Fi, like to use my phone. But it was frustrating because it said that the posting said that there was Wi-Fi, so my plan was to get there, talk to the guy, and be like, hey, what do you recommend to do around here? And then do a little bit of research online and then go find the places. But now I couldn't really do that.
Yeah.
After I kind of checked in, I kind of like wandered around a little bit, like around the streets. And then I came back, and then he came down and said, and he gave me the Wi-Fi password. And he sat there, and because I knew, and I pulled my phone out and was like, oh, I'm putting it in right now, and it's not working. And he was like, well, if you went up there, and I was like, oh, okay.
You're like, bro, I'm not coming in your house.
I'm not coming in your house. I don't care how many times you tell me I'm not coming in your house. Then, I don't know.
This was the same guy that also locked the gate
at
night?
Yes. And then he also said,
I remember you texting me and you were like, he's locking me in. And
I'm going to lock the gate at night. And so I couldn't get out if I needed to get out because the gate would be locked with the key.
Yeah.
I was like, I can't. So I barely slept at all. I didn't even unpack. And my thought was, and I told him because then he said, well, I'll come bring you breakfast in the morning. And I said, no, I'm probably going to leave at like 4 so I can get to so-and-so mountain or something. I kind of made up a thing of some like mountain that was nearby I was going to go look at. And I was like, but then I'll be back. And then he was like, okay. So I just packed my shit up and then woke up the next morning at like the crack of dawn, just loaded my car, put the key, he said because I told him I was leaving in the morning at a certain time. He said, well, I'll make sure the gate's open. Great.
Please and thank you.
Yes. So the gate was open and I left the key to the house under a flower pot. And I just left and then just drove to San Jose. And I just said, I'm just going to drive to San Jose. So I just drove to San Jose and then I found a Hilton in downtown San Juan and I booked it for that night. Because it ended up working out really great because I ended up staying in San Jose. There was the hotel that I ended up was near the Costa Rican Museum of Art.
Yeah, you went to a lot of great museums.
And there was a museum of pre-Columbian gold, that I could walk to. Yeah, it was great. So I just, wandered around San Jose, did about 6 or 7 miles, but just walking around the city, just walking. Because it was 3 miles to the pre-Columbian gold museum. And then I kind of walked there and then walked back and then just kind of saw the city, went to sleep and then got on a plane the next morning and came home. I think the theme of my Costa Rica trip was winging it.
100%. I'm so fucking impressed by that. Because I want to be like that. I want to be able to just go on a trip and be like, whatever. We'll see where it goes. It's all good.
Well, there were times that I was anxious about things, but I was like, well, what am I going to... I think I wasn't necessarily as laissez-faire about it until the past, I don't know, couple of years in traveling so much for my work.
A lot for work.
Yeah. And then having to problem solve things.
Just problem solving
and
a badass bitch.
Just
that's what it boils down to. I need to just problem solve like a badass bitch.
Just figure it out, and then just be like, this was my decision.
This is what I'm doing.
This is the decision that I made.
All right, everyone. So that concludes part 1 of this series where we are joining Tara on her solo lady travels. So part 1 covers Costa Rica. Be sure to tune in to part 2 where you can join Tara as she navigates her way through Bali. There you have it. Thanks, as always, for listening to this week's episode. Be sure to tune in for the next one. And if you are looking for some entertainment or you're bored, I highly recommend going back and listening to some of our previous episodes. You can follow the Fun with Friends podcast on Instagram at Fun with Friends Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at FunFriendsPod1. We are also on Facebook. You can listen to the podcast on Anchor FM, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts. As always, please rate, and review, and be sure to tell your friends about the podcast and get the word out there about it. And as always, my friends, go out there, try something new, and have some fucking fun. Bye!